The sun was hot over Savannah, Georgia, as Ruth Bell stepped out of her car and walked toward the pharmacy. She wore her nurse's uniform, light blue with a name tag pinned neatly to her chest. Her back ached from her long shift at the hospital, but she smiled as she moved. She always smiled. That's how her patients remembered her. She just wanted to pick up her blood pressure medicine and go home. Inside the pharmacy, the air was cold and the lights were too bright. Ruth walked up to the counter and waited patiently. She clutched her small purse in both hands and glanced at the clock on the wall. 5 minutes. 10. Still no one came. Finally, a white man in a white coat stepped up to the counter. His name tag read Mr. Carter, pharmacy manager. He didn't smile at Ruth. He didn't even say hello. Yes, he said sharply. Hi there, Ruth said kindly. I'm here to pick up my prescription. Ruth Bell. Mr. Carter narrowed his eyes at her. He didn't look at the computer. He didn't even ask for her ID. Wait here, he said, then disappeared into the back. Ruth stood still. She didn't know why, but something didn't feel right. A few minutes later, 2 police officers walked in. Their boots were loud against the floor. One was tall and pale, with sharp eyes. The other was shorter, stocky, with a bald head. That's her, Mr. Carter whispered to them. She tried to use a fake prescription. Ruth turned in surprise. Excuse me, she said softly. The tall officer, his name tag said Rick, stepped forward. Ma'am, you're under arrest for prescription fraud. What? No, that's a mistake, Ruth said quickly. That medicine is mine. You can call my doctor. I've picked it up here before, asked the lady who usually works. Turn around and put your hands behind your back, Officer Rick barked. But I didn't. The other officer, David, grabbed her arm roughly. Ruth gasped. Sir, please, my shoulder, I had surgery. They twisted her arms and pushed her down onto the floor. People watched. No one said a word. A little girl nearby began to cry. Ruth's heart pounded as they cuffed her wrists. She felt small, powerless, ashamed. I didn't do anything wrong, she whispered. I'm a nurse. I help people. Please, just check. Please. But the officers didn't care. They dragged her outside and stuffed her into the back of the police car. The sun that once warmed her now burned her skin. Tears rolled down her cheeks as the door slammed shut. In the station, no one listened. They took her fingerprints, took her mugshot, took her bag, took her voice. She sat alone in a small, cold cell. Her uniform was wrinkled. Her eyes were red. Her hands shook. She thought of her patients, her friends, her son, her grandbaby. What would they think? Then she thought of one person, her father, Elijah Bell. He was old now, almost 80. He walked with a cane. But he wasn't just any old man. He was a retired FBI agent. And not just any agent, he had spent his life fighting injustice. He marched during the civil rights movement. He locked up criminals. He exposed corruption. He didn't like loud music. He didn't like cold food. But what he hated most of all was injustice. And when his daughter didn't come home, he felt it. Deep in his bones. He called the hospital. She had left hours ago. He called her phone. No answer. He called the pharmacy. They hung up on him. Then he turned on the news and his heart stopped. Middle-aged woman arrested for prescription fraud, the news ticker read. A blurry picture of Ruth in handcuffs appeared on the screen. Elijah stood up so fast his cane clattered to the floor. No, he said aloud. Not my baby girl. He grabbed his old badge. It still shined. He picked up the phone and called someone he hadn't spoken to in years. Put me through to Washington, he said. Now. Back at the police station, Ruth sat alone, cold and silent. A young black officer passed by and gave her a small bottle of water. You okay, ma'am? He asked gently. Ruth looked up. She saw sadness in his eyes. He knew, but he couldn't do anything. Suddenly, a loud voice echoed through the hallway. Where's my daughter? Footsteps. A cane tapping the floor. Officer Rick stepped into view. Sir, you can't be here. Don't tell me where I can be. Elijah snapped. You're Officer Rick, aren't you? And your buddy is David Miller. Rick blinked. Yes, but you're both in trouble. Rick laughed nervously. Sir, your daughter committed a crime. Elijah pulled out a paper. This is her prescription. Signed by Dr. Angela Brooks. Certified. Legal. She's been taking this medicine for 5 years. Rick's smile faded. Elijah leaned in. Do you know what happens when you arrest someone without evidence? When you use force on an innocent woman. When you ignore her medical file, her doctor's number, and her name tag. Officer David appeared behind Rick. What's going on? Elijah turned to both of them. You're going to find out very soon. I just got off the phone with the Department of Justice. A federal investigation is coming your way. The air turned cold. Rick's voice cracked. You don't have that kind of power. I used to sit in the same office as the people who do, Elijah said. You messed with the wrong woman. In the cell, Ruth heard footsteps again. A key turned in the lock. The door opened. Rick stood there, stiff and pale. You're free to go. Ruth didn't move. Ma'am, you're... I heard you, she said, rising slowly. Her arms hurt. Her legs were sore. But her voice was strong. As she walked out, Elijah stepped forward and wrapped her in a hug. She buried her face in his chest. I knew you'd come, she whispered. He held her tight. They're not going to get away with this, baby. Not this time. Ruth sat on the couch in her father's living room. Her hands were wrapped around a warm cup of tea, but she hadn't taken a sip. Her eyes stared at the floor, and her body still felt like it was locked inside that cold jail cell. Elijah sat across from her, quiet but watchful. His mind was spinning like a storm. He had seen things like this before. He had fought cases like this before. But this one was personal. This one was his daughter. Do you remember the name of the officer who arrested you? He asked softly. Rick. And David, she said. Rick was the tall one. David was the one who pushed me to the ground. Elijah nodded. He stood slowly, his knees cracking. He walked over to a drawer and pulled out a thick black folder with dust on the edges. Inside were names, dates, photos, old files from old cases. Elijah never threw anything away, not when it came to justice. He flipped through until he found a paper-clipped set of reports. Rick Coleman and David Miller, he read aloud. Both officers at Savannah Police Department. Hired 5 years ago. I've heard their names before. Ruth looked up. From what? A whistleblower case, Elijah said. 2 years ago, someone tried to report them for using too much force. The case disappeared. Just like the others. Ruth's hands tightened around her cup. You think they've done this before? I know they have, Elijah said. They target people who look like you. And they never get caught because no one fights back. Ruth set the cup down and stood. Then let's fight. Elijah gave her a small smile. That's my girl. The next morning, Elijah made more calls. He spoke to old friends, federal agents, lawyers, reporters. Some owed him favors. Some just wanted to help. Within days, a quiet buzz grew louder. The Department of Justice opened a file. A civil rights lawyer named Maria Alvarez joined the case. She was sharp, fierce, and didn't back down from anyone. The news started to pay attention. A local station showed Ruth's arrest video. People saw her face. Kind, scared, and unfairly treated. And they began to talk. A few days later, a woman showed up at Elijah's door. She looked nervous. Are you Ruth's father? She asked. I am. My name's Jasmine. 2 years ago, those same officers stopped me. Said my taillight was broken. It wasn't. They made me get out of my car. One of them pushed me. They laughed when I cried. Elijah invited her inside. Jasmine told her story. And then came another man. Then an older lady. Then a college student. One by one, more people came forward. The same 2 officers. The same kind of lies. All black. All innocent. Elijah wrote down every detail. He took photos of bruises. He collected records and names. This wasn't just one mistake. This was a pattern. And now the world was watching. At the police station, Officer Rick felt the walls closing in. People looked at him differently now. Whispers followed him down the hall. Someone had placed a newspaper on his desk. The headline read, Innocent nurse arrested. Police under federal investigation. He slammed his fist on the desk. They don't know anything, he said to Officer David. David shook his head. They know enough. Officer Rick sneered. That old man, Elijah Bell, he's just bluffing. But he wasn't. Because just then 3 federal agents walked through the front door. They wore dark suits and badges. They asked to speak to the chief. Behind closed doors, the agents showed their files. Photos, witnesses, video clips, dates, names, all tied to officers Rick and David. The chief turned pale. This can't be true, he said. It is, the lead agent said. And it's only the beginning. Back at Ruth's home, she sat at the kitchen table with Maria, her lawyer. You have a strong case, Maria said. They violated your rights. But more than that, they hurt a lot of people. If we win this, we don't just help you, we help all of them. I want to speak out, Ruth said. People need to know. Maria nodded. Then get ready. We'll need your strength. The next day, Ruth stood in front of a row of cameras. Her heart beat fast, but she didn't shake. She told her story in simple, clear words. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just told the truth. And her truth echoed. People clapped. Reporters asked questions. More victims came forward. A storm had started and it wasn't stopping. Soon, the police department was in chaos. Officers were suspended. Chief Wilson stepped down. The mayor called for a public meeting. Protesters marched through downtown holding signs that read, "We believe Ruth. Justice for all. Clean the system." At night, Ruth sat beside her father and watched it all on the news. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. "I know," Elijah said gently. "But sometimes we don't choose the fight. The fight chooses us." And still more surprises came. One night, a white officer named Thomas knocked on Elijah's door. "I want to help," he said. "I worked with Rick and David. I saw things. I should have said something." "I'm sorry." Elijah looked him in the eyes. "Then speak now." Officer Thomas handed over files he had copied secretly, evidence of falsified reports, body cam videos that were never turned in, lies in court. Maria's eyes lit up when she saw the documents. "This is it," she said. "This will blow everything wide open." And it did. The DOJ launched a full civil rights investigation into the Savannah Police Department. Officers were questioned. Files were pulled. The truth spilled out like water from a broken dam. Rick and David were arrested. Not just for Ruth's case, but for multiple counts of misconduct and abuse. They didn't look so tough anymore in orange jumpsuits. Ruth watched the news and felt a wave of something strange. Relief, sadness, and hope all mixed together. It wasn't over, but it was beginning. The beginning of change. The courtroom was quiet. Cameras flashed outside. Reporters waited with notebooks, microphones, and big questions. Ruth sat at the front with her lawyer, Maria, holding her hand tightly. She looked calm on the outside, but inside, her heart was pounding. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about all the people who had been hurt, all the voices that had been ignored, and all the lies the police had told for years. Rick and David sat across from her, no longer in uniforms. Their heads were down. Their eyes didn't meet hers. The judge entered, and everyone stood. Then the trial began. Witness after witness told their stories. Jasmine, the young woman who had been pulled from her car. Mr. Johnson, the old man whose arm had been broken. A boy named Caleb, only 15, who had been shoved to the ground and called names. Each story added to the truth, and each one made Ruth's hands tighten into fists. Not out of anger, but out of strength. When it was her turn, Ruth stood and walked to the witness box. The room was silent. She looked at the jury, then at the judge. Then she spoke. "I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted my medicine. I've worked as a nurse for 33 years. I take care of people. I don't hurt anyone. But those officers, they didn't see me. They saw something else. And they treated me like I was nothing." Her voice wavered, just for a second. But she didn't cry. "I want them to know that they didn't break me. They tried. But I'm still here. And I'm not afraid anymore." When she sat down, the courtroom was still quiet. But this time, it wasn't empty silence. It was respect. The trial lasted for 2 weeks. The jury went away to decide. Ruth went home and waited. She sat on the porch with her father. He held her hand like he did when she was little and scared of thunder. "You were brave," he said. "I was terrified," she whispered. "And still brave," Elijah said. "That's what real strength is." The next day, the jury came back. The courtroom filled again. The judge asked the foreman to read the verdict. "For the charges of false arrest, abuse of power, and assault, we find the defendants guilty." Ruth closed her eyes. She didn't cheer. She didn't shout. She just breathed. It was over. Or almost. Because the next part was just as big. Maria filed a class action lawsuit, a big case where Ruth stood with all the others who had been hurt. They were suing not just the officers, but the entire department for years of corruption. And the city listened. They had no choice. People marched through the streets of Savannah, holding signs and chanting Ruth's name. New laws were passed to stop racial profiling. Body cameras were made a must. And most of all, new leaders were brought in. Honest ones. Fair ones. People who believed in justice. Ruth became a voice for change. She went to schools talking to kids about standing up for what's right. She gave interviews. She met with senators. She didn't want fame. She just wanted to make sure no one else went through what she did. One day, a little black girl came up to her after a speech. She looked up with big eyes and said, "You're the nurse lady who beat the bad guys." Ruth laughed softly. "I didn't beat them. I just told the truth." "Well," the girl said, "I want to be like you." Ruth knelt down and hugged her. "You already are," she said. Later that evening, Ruth sat at the same kitchen table with her father and Maria. Maria smiled. "We won the lawsuit. The city will pay millions to the victims. And more than that, they've promised real reform. It's official." Ruth felt tears in her eyes. Not sad ones. The kind that come when the storm finally passes. Elijah raised his cup. "To Ruth," he said proudly. "To the woman who didn't stay quiet." They clinked cups. Ruth smiled through her tears. But in the back of her mind, she knew it still wasn't over. There were other cities, other people, other broken systems, and maybe other Ruths out there still waiting to be heard. So the next morning, she sat down and wrote a letter. To the one who feels small, it began. To the one who's been hurt. To the one who thinks no one sees you, hears you, or believes you. I'm writing to tell you your voice matters. You matter. Don't give up. Don't stay silent. Stand tall and let the world hear your truth. The world changes when people like you speak. She folded the letter and mailed it to a national magazine. It was published a week later. Thousands read it. Many cried. Some got angry in a good way. Angry enough to change things. And Ruth? She kept going. Not as a hero. Not as a fighter. Just as herself. A nurse. A mother. A daughter. And a woman who proved that one voice can shake the world. Moral of the story. No matter how strong the system may seem, one person's courage can spark a movement for justice. Speaking the truth, even when your voice shakes, can protect others and bring light to hidden wrongs. Never let fear or injustice silence you, because real change begins when we refuse to be silent. Thank you for trusting me to bring this powerful story to life. Through Ruth's journey, we've shown young readers that standing up for what's right takes bravery, heart, and hope. I'm honored to help tell stories that inspire justice, spark emotion, and speak directly to the soul.